Here's a tip. Um, you watch a lot of films, you watch a lot of TV, you listen to music, you talk to people. Harvest those moments for all the bits that kind of um, feel interesting, that get your attention, that feel really good or feel really awful. Anything that you react to, and note it down in a notebook. Um, you don't have to have any kind of system. You just need to turn on your senses. And let's say you're watching TV. Let's say I'm watching John Carpenter's The Thing, okay, at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm really enjoying the whole. I've seen it however many times, but I'm really enjoying all the suspense and everything. And there are little things like how one of the crew on the station is kind of really abrasive with one of the other crew. Um, and then there's a certain look that someone gives to someone else. And then there's this noise from elsewhere in the complex. And then in some parts they look quite warm, and in other parts it's cold. And maybe one person hesitates just for a second before they do something. And then there's a knowing look exchanged between two people, etc., etc. And that's just from a film. From a book that I'm reading, it could be not necessarily what's written on the page that grabs my attention, but the thoughts that get triggered and the things that it makes me think of next. Um, maybe I'm reading something and I totally go off into a daydream, which does happen. Um, maybe there are two or three things from that daydream that are really powerful feelings, or just whatever it is, wherever it takes you. But there's a product, something's been created in there, from your own mind. Something's grabbed your attention and taken you off in a direction, and then that's the stuff you want to write down. That's the powerful stuff that you're drawn to. Okay, and you can use it in your own writing once you start to locate it and identify it and deal with it. Use it, and you're not going to use all of it, so don't worry about that. Um, if you listen to music, again, that's going to really fire your imagination. And okay, I'll tell you a really stupid story, but I have a folder somewhere in my filing system, um, and it's called "A Man Needs a Maid." It's a song by Neil Young, and it's basically, I loved the song, and I recognized that the song had this kind of structure, and as it told its story, the narrative did different things, and I identified certain elements in the narrative. And although I've never done it, I worked out a story where there were different strands of the story that were like instruments. And I did this just for fun, just because, to see, what would happen if. And I was asking myself, can I write a story that's like a song? Can I use a song and structure a story around it, just like James Joyce does with Ulysses? Um, can you take something that already exists and then take the bones and then hang new flesh on it, and then you got something different. You can do so many things by absorbing the stuff that's around you, just taking it in, and then doing something with one or two bits of it. And it's such a good and healthy process to feed yourself with stimulation, creativity, just the product of someone else's imagination is a trigger point, a jumping off point for what you want to do. Um, so you hear a lot talked about, writers should be reading a lot, which is true. And sometimes if you're like me, you kind of get worried that if you're reading something while you're writing, Does that influence what you're writing? Does it kind of change things, and it's subtle and maybe you don't notice? And it's probably okay, but sometimes you don't want that to happen. Like when I was researching We Are the Pigs, um, someone almost straight away, when I kind of said, "Oh, the plot is kind of boom, boom, boom," and they said, "Oh, that really reminds me of such and such," and then they told me this book and said, "Oh, you want to pick that up and read it sometime," and I was like, "Oh, I don't really, if you're saying that they're similar, you know." Um, anyway, I did, and I read it, and it was kind of initially, but we both go off in different directions, which is fine. I was kind of relieved, but for a while, I couldn't get that writer's voice out of my head. Or I felt that as though there was an influence, and so that kind of slowed me down for a bit because I was waiting for that to go. I wanted to get back to what I was doing again, and I wouldn't say that everything was worse because I did that. That's not true. But that it can get in the way. Now, if I'd have watched a film or listened to a song, I probably wouldn't have had any of those hang-ups because I would have watched the film and I wouldn't be thinking, oh, I'm writing my novel like that director directs. That wouldn't be an issue. Or I'm writing this novel like that guy sings. I wouldn't be worried about that. So, maybe that's the healthy alternative. When you want to feed yourself with creative stuff, go to a different medium. Look at some fantastic art, whether it's physical art or whether it's 2D, paintings or just photographs. Take that stuff in. I'm loving all the kind of Instagram generation stuff where people are putting all sorts of filters and effects on their photographs. It's just phenomenal. I'm really this is what gets me excited. I'm having great fun taking some old photographs and doing like maybe 9, 10 different versions with just different effects and different lighting, just to see, just how they change. And sometimes that is the story. There's this image and it changes, 9 or 10 times, and different elements of it just kind of rise up or disappear depending on what effect or lighting that you use. And it's just by doing it that this stuff kind of just rises up and then gets included in my writing. Many years ago, when I did all the mathematical stuff, I think I've talked about it in other vlogs, with my good friend Jonathan Key. We did sort of word grids, and we would kind of reverse them, or we'd do homonyms or homographs or whatever, and we'd change things, antonyms, whatever, so to try and sort of stop ourselves from second guessing the process. We always wanted to keep it fresh, so we would write the grid, and then sometimes we would just arbitrarily do some kind of operation on it so that it was totally unlike what we were expecting. But the key process that we found every single step of the way was it had to be done by our own hand. It had to be the human element in it, of us doing it, because that was when all the connections got made and all the the brain stuff kept firing. The moment that I tried to computerize it, it fell flat because it just, I just wasn't involved anymore. And so I was like, I'd make a grid and that was great, and then I'd hit the button and so what? Whereas if I made a grid and I wrote it out by hand, even though I wasn't aware of it, there were all these things starting to fire, and then as I was copying it out or changing it or reversing it or doing whatever I was doing with it or merging it with another one, my brain was already composing, and that's the amazing thing, that basically harnessing the power of the subconscious mind, or whatever it is, your muse, your whatever you want to call it, is so powerful. You got to give it that chance. So feed yourself with stuff, okay? And it doesn't have to be elite or elitist. It doesn't have to be fine or finest. It doesn't, it can be hack writing or bad filmmaking, because ideas can come at you from anywhere, and sometimes it's very often for me, it's when I see something that's rubbish, or I think it's rubbish, and or it's like I can spot a big problem with something, and then I think, oh, I wonder if, and that's sometimes the big jumping off point for me, it's, someone on Facebook was just a friend of mine, Caliban, was just talking about basically a bad sales video, okay, and the guy sort of like rambled off, bit like I'm doing now, but he kind of rambled off, and which is okay in one of these kind of informal chat videos, but when you're doing a sales video, you want it to be tight and you want it to be relevant. And this guy sort of started to tell a story and then kind of rambled off and said, "Oh yeah, you have to watch the film I'm describing to get it." And then it's sort of like, okay, well that was no good. And then so I was just laughing and saying, "Oh, it'd be great fun just for a laugh. We should make some really bad sales videos just for fun." And then I just sort of went, ironically, but a lot of the internet marketing crowd already beat us to it. Damn. But we were kind of laughing and saying, actually, it would be quite fun to do, making a bunch of bad videos. And actually, that's not such a bad idea. And maybe it would be fun to write a bad story. And maybe in your mind there's a little voice that says you do that anyway. But really try hard to write something bad. Try to write cliches. Try to write, the most abominable descriptions. Try to make all the mistakes that can be made. And actually, you'll see how hard it is and how you don't do it most of the time. It'll probably be quite a good experience for you. But it's fun, and sometimes it's fun to just chuck everything, like take the deck of cards, throw it up in the air, and see where everything falls down, and then see a new pattern to something that you didn't see before. I've had friends who would open the Bible at a certain, and then go, boom, and then whatever phrase, whatever verse, whatever sentence it was, they would take that as their starting point for their creativity, and for them that was divinely inspired. I've had the friends who were religious in different ways, and they would get their deck of tarot cards and they would kind of chuck a few around and look at the pictures and see what story it told. And me, I used to get prints of fine art that were about postcard sized or slightly bigger, and I would get them and I would get a whole bunch, and then I would start to arrange them and move them about until I got some kind of a story going. And you don't and it helped that it was physical and it was in my hands, but you don't need to do that. You've got the internet. You've got all the images probably in the world and some available to you through the search engines. You could get a bunch of images and rearrange them in your PowerPoint slide or your publisher document or whatever, or your favorite graphics package, and you could move these images around until you've got a narrative. You could storyboard using other people's images until you start to feel, yeah, yeah, that's it. It's whatever happens between that picture and that picture. That's where my story is. That's the interesting bit for me. And then you start to write, inspired by whatever it is. So there's so much that you can do to feed yourself. And feeding yourself is the first bit that's so important, and the second bit is that you do it yourself. That you have an involvement in it, because the more you're involved, the more your hands and arms are kind of into the gunk of writing, the more amazing stuff is going to float out of your subconscious mind, because it's there. It's just waiting for you to get out, to get over yourself and to get out of the way and to let it start to flow. So give it a go. Have an experiment. I think I detailed probably 2 or 3 or 4 things that you could try and do there. So give something a go, and if you feel stuck, and if you feel like you're not sure what to do, do the opposite of what you would normally do and see how that works out. And I'm not saying that you're going to publish that, but just do it to free up the energy and see what happens. And I guarantee you that you'll try it, and then something will happen, and then you can learn from it. You can look at it and go, yeah, or you can go, actually, wow, that's quite interesting. I never knew that. Okay, so you get unintended consequences by changing things around, and who knows what kind of creative avenues that's going to lead you down. Anyway, I've talked for nearly 15 minutes. Can you believe it? I bet you can, but I can't, because to me it just seems like 2 minutes. So I'm going to come back to reality now. In the real world, it's 15 minutes of video. In Paul time, it was very quick. And I'll see you in the next one. And I'll be interested to see what quality this is. I've used for this, I went into YouTube and on the settings in my video upload page, it's got 3 settings. Like the bottom one is record using Hangouts, so I can start a Hangout and broadcast it and record it, Hangouts on it. And the middle one, I forget what it was now, but the top one was record using your webcam. So I'm recording not using my local software, although I have got the local software acting as an intermediary. It's what's making this black and white, but it is recording up through YouTube. Now, my experience of this before is that it often degrades the quality of the video and the audio. So we'll see. And I think that's something to do with my processing power on the computer, and then the bandwidth, which is really terrible. Okay, I have awful internet speeds here, and take whatever you just thought of, and then halve it, and then halve it again, and then halve it again, and you're probably about what I've got. And there's a story in there, isn't there? And you can write stories about anything. Anyway, I'm going to leave you to it. Experiment. Feed yourself. Feed your brain. Feed your emotions. Feed your senses, and then turn that. Let's have a yuck metaphor. Regurgitate that back out into your writing. Okay. Take the pre-masticated ideas and then stick them into your porridge of writing. And I'm having fun coming up with really bad metaphors now, so I'm going to stop this video before I go too far. Yeah, have fun. That's the main thing, isn't it? Have fun. Don't make this torture. Don't make it hard. Enjoy yourself and find out stuff by having fun, and that's the best thing possible. I'll see you next time. Cheers, and thanks for watching. If you watched this far, that's pretty cool. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.